Hey everybody, and welcome back to Revival Health. I'm Lindsay, and on this channel I talk about functional medicine, natural living, and more. Today is going to be the first video in a series talking about gut health, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, something I'm super passionate about because it impacts every area of our lives. And I'm really excited to take a deep dive with you guys over the next few weeks. Now, if you've seen anything on the internet or anywhere online with social media about gut health, you might be confused about exactly what it's talking about. It's super trendy for people to talk about things affecting your gut. But what I want to do today is really educate you guys on what is gut health, define some terms that are important for you to understand, and give you some education to empower you to make decisions for yourself. So, what exactly is gut health? Gut health is important to the whole body because your gut health directly affects your ability to digest food, absorb nutrients, and synthesize important things that your body actually creates inside the gut. Another super important facet of gut health is its participation in removing and eliminating toxins from your body. So it's very important that your gut is functioning optimally to be able to perform these essential tasks. The first term that I really want to define for you guys is the microbiome. The microbiome is essentially the internal environment of the GI tract that's composed of bacteria, viruses, fungus, even parasites. And all of these things in an ideal world live in a state of balance. If you watched my first videos, you understand that nothing happens in the body in isolation, and the body works very hard to maintain a balance. And so the same thing is true for the microbiome. The microbiome begins developing actually in utero, and particularly at birth. There is a lot of data and evidence that shows that the way that you were born, the way that you were fed, have a humongous impact on your microbiome. Now, of course, you have no control over what happened to you then, and there are ways that you can recover the microbiome if those situations were not ideal. But I will go into those more in a little bit. So your entire GI tract, which just to clarify, that means from entrance to exit, is working in harmony with each other with all of those bacteria, viruses, funguses that I mentioned. You'll have trillions of cells inside the microbiome, and it is so important that that is cared for appropriately. The microbiome is super important for three main reasons. Number one is energy. So your body is going to absorb food and nutrients from your diet and utilize those vitamins, minerals, nutrients, etc. that you need for optimal energy. If your microbiome is damaged or functioning at a suboptimal level, you oftentimes are going to have a low energy level. The second reason is for your mood. So there is a ton of research out there right now that is discussing the gut brain connection. Basically, your gut is the second brain, and it talks to your brain constantly throughout the day. Your gut is where the overwhelming majority of your neurotransmitters are, including things like serotonin, which can help with your mood. Oftentimes, medications that are used for anxiety and depression regulate serotonin levels. So, if you have, again, a suboptimal microbiome situation, you are likely not going to have optimal neurotransmitters, which will definitely affect your mood. The third thing is your immune health. Again, the overwhelming majority of your immune health starts in the gut. About 80% of your immune system is housed inside the gut in the GI tract. So, again, so important that the microbiome is functioning appropriately in order to balance these three things. So, you might be asking, why is this such a big deal? Why are we talking about this so much in healthcare and especially through functional medicine? That's because the way that our current American lifestyle is, it absolutely negatively impacts the microbiome. The number one microbiome killer, aside from probably antibiotics, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is stress. And we all know that stress is unavoidable really in our fast-paced lifestyle, but there are things you can do to mitigate it, to manage it, because stress has a negative impact with the microbiome health. In the same way that your gut talks to your brain talks to your gut. So there's also the mind-body connection where you can actually change the composition of your microbiome through your mindset and thinking, which also kind of relates back to the stress piece. We also live in an over sanitized world. This is a relatively new development. Up until probably the last 50 years, our environments were not clean. There was many exposures to dirt, animals. When we were living in an agricultural society, there was so much exposure to the environment that now has changed the way that our microbiomes function. When you take in things like a little dirt and germs here and there, it actually can be good for you to build up the variety of the microbes that live inside your body, because you want to have a diverse population. This is why when you are taking a probiotic, for example, you don't just want to take one single strain. It's important. And I have a whole video about this coming up soon that we'll discuss, but how to choose a probiotic. It's so important that you create a diverse environment, because that is how it's designed to function optimally. When you have overgrowth in one area or another, that's when you can also get into trouble, because things get what's called opportunistic and they take over, and they go from being neutral to overbearing, and then they begin to be the boss, and it can throw the balance out of whack. Another thing that I want to talk to you guys about is called leaky gut. Now, this term, when I first heard it, I thought was so bizarre, and I was told several times that it didn't exist by several providers that I saw in the past when I was trying to get to the root of my own health crisis. What leaky gut is essentially increased intestinal permeability, meaning that your intestines, in the lining of your intestines, there's a tight wall, not completely sealed, but a tight wall where all of these little junctions are sealed. And what happens is when you have things like I was saying, the stress, the lack of diversity in your microbiome, and other factors like antibiotic use, chemical exposures, and toxins, and things like that, those tight junctions loosen. And so now, whereas your intestines might have been like a fine mesh strainer, all of a sudden there's humongous gaps, right? And things that are passing through the intestines that are meant to stay inside the GI tract alone now are permeating through the membrane and getting absorbed into the bloodstream. And that is where you get into trouble. Leaky gut is a problem because the intestinal lining, this is a super interesting fact, of your body actually is so large that it will cover the entire surface area of a football field. It's hard to believe that is all wound up inside of our gut. But when that lining becomes damaged and those junctions loosen, it can open you up to a whole host of problems, because things that are supposed to stay in the GI tract are not supposed to get absorbed into the bloodstream. So essentially, when the microbiome is healthy and the gut lining is healthy, it keeps in what is supposed to be in and keeps out what is supposed to be out. Leaky gut has been associated essentially with every single autoimmune disease as a common factor, which is very interesting since there are so many different autoimmune diseases out there that present with many symptoms that have nothing to do with the gut. This basically creates an inflammatory situation in the gut that can spread throughout the body via the bloodstream and cause a whole host of problems. Because what is circulating now in the bloodstream are particles of partially digested food, toxins, and other things that have no place there. As I said, leaky gut is a common denominator for essentially every autoimmune disease because of the inflammation. Now, you may see this inflammation showing up in your body in a variety of ways, as I said, that have nothing to do with the gut. Now, oftentimes you will have some GI disturbances, but there are many people who do not have them necessarily, and they see the impact of this inflammation elsewhere in the body. This can be through things like brain fog, anxiety, rashes, eczema. Um, Even type 1 diabetes has been linked to leaky gut. So it's really fascinating and such an important concept because by addressing the gut health and healing and maintaining that intestinal lining, restoring the permeability back to as it was designed, you're able to actually prevent so many disease processes from happening. And if you already have a diagnosis, such as Hashimoto's, like I have, by addressing the gut health, you are really able to get to the root cause of many of those bizarre symptoms you're probably experiencing. Hippocrates once said 2,000 years ago that all disease begins in the gut. And he was so right. Gut health is one of the most critical things you can do for your total body health. And managing and reducing inflammation is one of the best ways to prevent yourselves from becoming sick, as inflammation is one of the main drivers of all disease. So stay tuned for the next few weeks as I dive more into gut health, different diagnoses, what you can do about them, functional medicine testing options, how to choose a probiotic, and more. I have so much good information coming your way, so stay tuned. If this video was helpful or if you enjoyed the material, please like and subscribe so you can stay connected and get all this information right to you as soon as it's released. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.